Hi, I'm Jayme from the Roaring Riot Podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about the NFL playoffs divisional round as well as the wild card round results. But first, I want to talk about the Carolina Panthers hiring new head coach Matt Rhule. Let's do this.
This is the Roaring Riot Podcast, your source for everything in the known universe about the Carolina Panthers.
I know nothing about Matt Rhule. I had never really heard of him before. So I'm really indifferent on Matt Rhule, and I'm like any other person we would bring in that I've never heard of, I'm going to hope they're going to be successful. But my initial impressions on Matt were when I looked at his picture, he looks like the kind of guy who's had a career of failing upwards. Like he'll just fail and fail and fail and get promoted and promoted and promoted. But that's not very fair. Looks aren't everything. So I went and had to read the articles that have been written about him to look a little bit into his record. And it sounds like he has a pretty good record here. So let's go over it a little bit. He's got a very long coaching career, mostly as an assistant at Temple. But after his first 6 years as an assistant at Temple, he went to the New York Giants in 2012, where he served under Tom Coughlin, and he was the offensive line coach. After that, he got hired to go back to Temple as the head coach. So he was there from 2013 to 2016. Then Baylor hired him away in 2017 to 2019, and which he had a great record, I suppose, at those two schools, because the Carolina Panthers decided to hire him as the head coach, and he's getting paid a ridiculous salary. He's getting, I think, I've heard different reports here. I've heard it's either $60 million for 7 years or $70 million for 7 years or $60 million for 6 years and a seventh-year option. I'm not quite sure exactly what it is. So it's either about $8.5 million or $10 million a year to be the head coach. And either way, that's a really big number. But these numbers don't really faze me. What I think you should take away from it is that think about how much money is in the NFL that they're able to pay these guys, and when we are able to pay the head coach this much, maybe all of the players on the team are probably underpaid as well. But you know what? Good for Matt Rhule. His college career has earned him this kind of contract. It seems like a bit high to pay someone when they haven't had a proven track record in the NFL. But you know what? Maybe it'll work out. Now, I know a lot of people say that hiring a college coach to come to the NFL is a bad idea. My co-host Ashlyn is one of them. And they've got a lot of evidence to point out to show where that's true, but I don't think that that's necessarily a hardline fact. It's not a done deal. I think you have to evaluate every single situation as its own thing. And with the Carolina Panthers, Matt's coming into a situation where he's got several Hall of Famers on this team, or potential Hall of Famers. He's got CMC, Luke Kuechly, probably Cam Newton. So he's not starting from scratch with nothing. And I think that's going to make a big difference between him coming here and, let's say, Coach Spurrier going to Washington Redskins. But let me go back to his college career real quick, and so we can see what it is exactly that made him attractive to David Tepper. At Temple, he turned that team around. So in his third year as Temple's head coach, Matt Rhule went 10-2 in the regular season, and he won the America's East Division and took part in the conference inaugural championship game. The next season, he took the Owls to their second consecutive championship game, where they won their first conference championship since 1967. I guess he made them relevant in 2015 and 2016, but then he got hired away to Baylor. 2017 was his first year there, and they finished the season with a disappointing 1-11, which meant they would not qualify for a bowl for the first time since 2009. In 2018, they finished 6-6 and received an invite to the 2018 Texas Bowl, where the Bears led a 45-38 victory over the Vanderbilt Commodores. And they finished the season with a 7-6 record. Then in 2019, he had an 11-1 record and ultimately fell to Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game and Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. When I read that, his Baylor record isn't that great. He's just another college coach that's going to get a shot in the NFL, and we'll see what happens. I mean, so far, I think Pete Carroll's the most successful college coach to come to the NFL. It is a different environment because the NFL is much more of a business than in college. The head coach has more control over the team, and they also got to play the role of a mentor, a father figure, and also he's got to be in charge of making sure the kids have to go to class and do well in their schoolwork. There's a lot more different things that a college coach has to do than an NFL coach has to do. An NFL coach has to just focus on football and winning games. I hope Matt Rhule is successful. Unfortunately, I'm not going to just jump on the bandwagon and say, yeah, let's go. He's going to be awesome. I don't know. I just don't know. We got to wait and see. So the Roaring Riot decided to go ahead and update their logo in anticipation of Matt Rhule coming to the Carolinas, obviously changing the R with an RH to represent the coach. I think this is a pretty clever logo. I like it. If Matt Rhule turns out to be a success, this is going to be awesome. If he turns out to be a bust, we're going to look back on this and go, yeah, let's kind of just tuck this away and kind of forget about it as we move on. So hopefully we get a successful career out of Matt Rhule, and we'll be able to add to the short list of successful college coaches in the NFL. All right, so let's go ahead and switch over and talk about the NFL playoffs. First, I want to talk about what happened in Week 1. Here you'll see Week 1, we had the Tennessee Titans versus the New England Patriots, and they got a huge upset over Tom Brady, and that might have been Tom Brady's last game in New England. And I'm hoping it's Tom Brady's last game as a player. The Titans were able to get a huge win, beating the Patriots and moving on. They will be facing the Baltimore Ravens in the next round. So the Buffalo Bills got to a huge lead over the Texans with a 16-point lead, and then the Texans came roaring back, taking a 19 to 16-point lead with 19 unanswered points. Then Buffalo managed to tie it up and take it to overtime, but the Texans prevailed, and they will be moving on to face the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the interesting thing over here when we look at the AFC playoffs, you have the Tennessee Titans, who used to be the Houston Oilers, are playing the Baltimore Ravens, who used to be the Cleveland Browns. And then you have the Houston Texans, who play where the Houston Oilers used to play, are playing against the Kansas City Chiefs, who used to be the Dallas Texans way back in the 1960s. Two of these teams have never won a Super Bowl. The Chiefs haven't won a Super Bowl in 50 years, and the Baltimore Ravens, they're the ones who've won the Super Bowl the most recently. They also won in 2000. And normally I root for the underdogs when it comes to Super Bowls. Like, I want to see somebody who's never won one before, or if everybody's won one, I'll root for the team that hasn't won the most recently. But I kind of support Baltimore Ravens as my AFC team since I live in Washington, D.C. It's like about 45 minutes up the road. So as a regional team, I will probably continue rooting for the Ravens. But my heart is kind of going with either the Texans or the Titans. It's been 20 years since the Titans have been in the Super Bowl, where they lost to the greatest show on turf by, 2 yards? They threw a pass to try to get in the end zone to win the game, and he got down just short of the goal line. That was a pretty intense Super Bowl. All right, now let's move over to the NFC side over here. We have the Minnesota Vikings had played the New Orleans Saints, and thankfully the Vikings were able to prevail, and they went into New Orleans and got a huge win. The Vikings are moving on to play the San Francisco 49ers. And then the other game was the Bird Bowl, where we had the Seattle Seahawks playing the Philadelphia Eagles, and this is probably the most boring game of the four, where I believe Carson Wentz got a concussion, and the guy can't catch a break, but the Seahawks ended up prevailing, and they're going to be moving on to face the Green Bay Packers in the next round. So when we look at what's going on over here in the NFC games, you've got the Vikings, who are a team that have played in 4 Super Bowls and lost them all, and you have the San Francisco 49ers, who have won 5 Super Bowls, but they haven't won since 1995, so it's been 25 years since the 49ers have won. And then we've got the Green Bay Packers versus the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle is 1-2 in Super Bowls, but they are the most recent winner of the Super Bowl for the NFC teams. And Green Bay, who has won, I believe, 4 Super Bowls. They've won the first 2, then they won in 96, and then 2008 or 9. It's been a while since I've actually memorized all those stats. But yeah, they have 4 Super Bowls. So we've got Kirk Cousins versus Jimmy Garoppolo, and then Russell Wilson versus Aaron Rodgers. This is a tough one when I think about who I want to root for. I've just never really been a fan of the Minnesota Vikings, but seeing as how that they are the one team in the NFC that's never won a Super Bowl, I believe I'm going to have to actually root for them to go all the way here. And the nice bonus of that is if the Vikings can manage to win the Super Bowl, then me living in Washington, I'll be able to laugh in the face of all the Washington Redskins fans I know because their owner's stupid and didn't sign that man to a long contract. Now, I don't believe that Kirk Cousins is a great quarterback, but he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. I'd say he's probably top 15, maybe cracking the top 10. But I don't think that the 49ers are exactly a world-beating team. Yeah, they've been dominant this year in the NFL. I think Baltimore Ravens were the best team in the NFL this year. But the 49ers, while they played really well, they got a lot of their wins early when some of the teams they were playing were struggling. And then they started playing tougher teams in the second half of the season, and they still managed to squeak out the victories, but they didn't look quite as dominant. So I expect the 49ers to have a real tough game on their hands with the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think they're going to run away with this. So we'll move over to the Seattle Seahawks and the Green Bay Packers. Now, the Seahawks are going to be going to Lambeau Field, which is never a good situation for Seattle. They haven't won in Green Bay since 1999. But this Packers team isn't really dominant. I think they somehow lucked into the number 2 seed in the NFC playoffs. Seattle, if they were fully healthy, I think they would just steamroll Green Bay here. But they're having to work with a patchwork team. A lot of guys are banged up. And it didn't help that they didn't get a week of rest and they had to play against the Philadelphia Eagles last week. So I'm torn on this one. I don't really care who wins it. I want to see, because like I said, I want to see the Vikings go all the way. And if I have to pick between Seattle and Green Bay, I guess I'm going to go with Green Bay because they have the home field advantage. Neither of these two teams excite me. I think that the NFC champion is going to come out of the Minnesota and San Francisco game. All right, and then let's go back over to the AFC. I want to just say, who I think I'm going to win. Titans and Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to go with the Ravens. So this is the one where I'm letting my emotions kind of overrule me. But the Ravens have just been dominant. They were the best team in the NFL this year. So I think they're probably going to steamroll to the Super Bowl. And then with the Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs, we're going to have, I think the Chiefs are going to move forward, and then I think they'll probably lose to the Ravens in the AFC Championship game. So if I'm right, then we're going to see a very purple Super Bowl with the Ravens versus the Vikings. Alrighty, that's going to be your NFL playoffs this year. I've got the Ravens and the Vikings going all the way. Thanks for watching, everybody. This has been a presentation of the Roaring Riot Podcast. It's part of the Riot Network, which is home of the Riot Report, where you can find original Panthers reporting and news. So I want everybody to have a great playoff weekend and keep pounding. I'll see you next time.
Panthers News Blitz.
Made with bits of real panther, so you know it's good.
This is the Roaring Riot Podcast.
And now, of course, it's time for my final four.